So you want to open a mobile coffee business. Welcome to the first of many videos where I'm basically going to be doing a deep dive on different subjects of opening a mobile coffee business. I have a masterclass out that I did with the help of a bunch of amazing business owners that you can always find in the link of any of these videos. But I thought that it would be best if I could go and do a deep dive into all these different topics that we went over on that masterclass. Each video, I'm just going to talk about certain things that I was wondering when I first opened and kind of the pros and cons of each decision, and also any tips and tricks that might be super helpful for you if you're just starting in the middle of it or just need some help with the process. So one of the first things that I ran into when I was deciding that I wanted to open a mobile coffee business and I just didn't know where to start was the fact that I had to choose between a truck or a trailer. Now, I honestly always loved the look of trailers. I had seen trailers all over the West Coast when I lived there, and I really just loved the look of them. I thought that you could do so many fun things with them. I thought that it would just be easier, they're cuter, and all these different things. But it wasn't until I actually opened my coffee trailer that I realized that maybe I should have looked into trucks a little bit more. In this video, I'm just going to be talking about the pros and cons of owning a truck versus a trailer, and hopefully it'll help you make your decision as you move forward. So let's start with trucks, and we're going to start with the pros of having a truck. Now, I've never personally owned a mobile truck or mobile food business that was on a truck. However, I do have some friends in the business that have had trucks and have given me some feedback on kind of how it is for them to own a truck. I feel like I also was really able to put some pros and cons together because these were things that the trailer just wouldn't do for me or things that I struggled with when I have the trailer. So the first pro, in my opinion, of having a truck versus a trailer is space, size, and accessibility to basically every event that you're going to go to. With a truck, it's just the truck. You're not towing something else, you're not pulling something else, you don't have your big truck and then your trailer on the back, you just have your truck. We were at an event where we had to park in a certain designated spot, and it was really hard to get in that spot with the truck and the trailer and turning it and figuring out how to pull it in. But then when we were leaving, we just knew that it wasn't a good space to park in from the beginning, but we decided just to go through with it anyways, and we actually ended up doing a lot of damage to our left piece of trim that we will have to replace when we reopen. So that was just something that I probably could have avoided if it was a truck, because with a truck I could have just went right in there, got comfortable, and everything would have worked out. So one of the pros of having a truck, I would definitely say, is the size, because it is what it is, and the accessibility to different events, different spaces, and just the ease of actually just driving the truck and not worrying about something being towed to another vehicle. Another pro of trucks is the simplicity of it all. So it's one opposed to two. So you have one truck that you just need to worry about. All of your stock is in that truck, hopefully, unless it's at a commissary. Everything is in that truck. You're in that truck. Your partner is in that truck. And that's it. It's just you guys and the truck, which is just nice and simple. With a trailer, you do have to have a vehicle to tow it with. We had a truck that we would tow our trailer with, and it just became difficult depending on where you live, because a lot of residencies won't let you just park that on the road. Sometimes you have to find a parking spot for it, and then if you think about it, after every single event, you'd have to bring your trailer to your designated parking spot, unhitch it, drive your truck home, and it just kind of makes it another thing that you have to think about. It makes it a little bit more difficult because you just have to always think about two things instead of one. Now, you could kind of say the same thing if you do have to park your food truck at a facility, that you would have to drive a truck there or a car there anyways to get in your truck and drive to your events. But I honestly think that if we personally had a food truck instead of a trailer, we would have had so many more opportunities for parking it wherever we were. We did end up moving from a house that had a big parking area to a more apartment style living, and because it's a trailer, we couldn't just park it anywhere. We actually had to bring it to my mother-in-law's house, and that was an hour drive away because the commissary that I had wanted to go to was charging $250, I think, a month to park it. So it's just something to think about. Another really big pro, depending on where it is that you're going to be selling all of your product or setting up every single day, is if you are in a city, I would say a truck is the way to go. I know that trailers look really cute and they're so fun to see, but I've realized that unless you have a spot to set up every single day that's the same exact spot, if you're in a city, a truck is just way easier because, like I said, it's just this one thing you have to pull in, pull out, and you don't have to worry about having two spaces open as opposed to one. And you don't have to worry about figuring out how to back it in and back it out of this one spot. And honestly, with a truck, you're able to pick up and move throughout the day. That was something I figured out that I could not do with my trailer, because to have to close everything down and wrap everything up and just, it was just way too much for me to go from spot to spot. So I always only did one spot per day. On the occasion I would go somewhere at nighttime, but I would always go home first. And even that was, it was a lot. So I would say if you're going to be in a city, a food truck is the way to go because you can just bop around all over. And if you're a fellow food truck owner, maybe you could add in some wisdom there, but I just have seen that it's been really common for there to be food trucks in the cities as opposed to trailers. Now we're going to get into the cons of having a food truck. Now these are cons that I was running into when I decided to have a trailer, and just things that I had thought, you know what, that's too big of an issue for me right now to want to do a truck. And the main one being was the cost. I was noticing that when I was on Facebook Marketplace and all these different websites where I was trying to find a mobile food business that I could just buy and run, I was finding, honestly, food trucks being sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And don't get me wrong, they were completely ready to be used. I wouldn't have had to do any of the renovations that me and my husband had to do. We wouldn't have had to build the thing from the ground up. We wouldn't have had to do any of that because the food truck was just, it was ready to go. But I could not afford it. When I was first opening, I had a very, very tight budget that I was trying to stick to. And we were even, up until the end that we opened, we had to do a t-shirt sale in order to finish buying all the materials to open the trailer. So if you are wanting to do a mobile food business, maybe it's just because that's your passion. But for me, it was also because I knew I wanted to have a coffee shop one day, but I just didn't have the funds to do that just yet. So I really thought that the mobile food business would be a lot better for me at the time because it required a lot less money to start. It also was great for me because I knew that I was kind of going to be a little nomadic for the next couple of years and wasn't exactly sure where I would be ending up. So it was really nice that I opened a mobile business that I could kind of shut down if I needed to, or move around if I found a different spot that I enjoyed living more. So to get back to my point, the cost can be a lot. You can find a mobile food truck on Facebook Marketplace for like, I was seeing low ones at like 20,000, 15,000, but they need a lot of work. And I think that a lot of the times when they're selling them for that low on Facebook, it's because something is actually wrong with the engine or the transmission, or something is going on. But after doing some research, I found a lot of mobile food trucks that were from 20,000 to 100,000. So if that's something that you want, and maybe you don't have someone that can help you do renovations, or maybe you can't do renovations yourself, and you just want to say, hey, I want to buy a truck and I want it to be ready for me to use, then yeah, maybe if you can get a small business loan, or you can make that work, or you already have the funds, then go for it, because you're going to save yourself a lot of headache of trying to renovate whatever it is that you buy. So go for it. And I think that's great. But for people that don't have the funds to start up, I would say that a truck is a little bit harder to manage and a little bit harder to come across a good product and a good truck that's ready to go for a low price. This next con is something that I actually read a lot about on Reddit. And this is one of the reasons that I really decided against a food truck. And that is that when you break down, your business breaks down as well. So if something happens with a truck, you can't go out that day. What are you going to do? You can't drive your truck. You can't get your business to wherever it is that you need to go. That is a huge loss on the day for you. However, I know this doesn't happen that often. I mean, if you think about it, how often does your car actually break down? So it might only be a couple of times the entire time that you're open. But for me, because I'm not handy with cars or trucks or anything like that, I was like, you know what? Let me not do that. And I knew that if I did a trailer, I would be able to borrow different families' trucks if I needed to, if my truck broke down, or I knew that there would be other options for actually pulling my trailer so that if something did happen to the truck, my entire business wouldn't be gone for the day. And with that whole breakdown idea, I also was thinking about the fact that what can actually go wrong with my trailer where I would have to be closed for an extended amount of time. I did have where my water heater broke, and I did have to find a water heater, but I was able to find one at Home Depot, and it was like that. It actually broke at an event, and I had to go get one before I could actually get inspected for the event. So that was something that I was able to do right on the spot. There wasn't much that I honestly had to think about breaking that would close me down for the day, except when in the winter my water pipes did freeze, and that was the end of that. But besides that, it was like everything was so manageable. But with a truck, I just felt like something happens, I'm gone for a couple days because I have to go to a mechanic and get it fixed, and I just didn't want that to be a risk for my own business. The final con I have for a truck ownership as opposed to a trailer ownership is that it's a little bit harder to customize your aesthetic. Now, you can definitely make your truck look super cute. I've seen a bunch of trucks on Instagram and even in person that I'm like, wow, that actually looks so cute. There is a coffee trailer called Batchy Brew, and they just have a plain black truck with white writing, and I just think it looks so elegant and it looks so clean. It makes you want to walk up there and order a coffee, and I think that's great. I think trucks can also look, on the other hand, really dirty, and so can trailers, believe me. But I think that a lot of the times trucks are just, it's a little bit harder to customize the aesthetic, and it's a little bit harder to match it to your style and what you want to bring to your customers. For me, a trailer was the way to go because I knew that I could make it look like a house, and my business name is Omi's Coffee House. So I just felt like it was going to be a good option for me because I knew I wanted to make people feel cozy, like they were actually at a coffee house. So a trailer was the way to go. But I also think that you can get really cool trucks if you have the time and money and even just the patience of waiting for the perfect truck. Two Sisters Coffee Company out of Virginia, they have the cutest vintage truck. And honestly, if I could get something like that, I would do a truck. It's the cutest thing ever, and you don't even need to do too much decor on the outside or inside because the truck is everything. They are just the cutest little truck. So I think you can definitely make it a cute thing if that's what you're into. But just for coffee shops and the general aesthetic of coffee, I just found that it's a little bit harder to make it to your design when it's already just a truck. So let's get into trailers. So I'm going to start off with the pros first. And one of the major pros, which I kind of already mentioned in the cons section of owning a mobile food truck, is cost. So with a trailer, there's just so many options. You can find trailer fabricators who have made these little tiny coffee trailers for $15,000. You can find one that's ready to go for $30,000. Even cheaper, you can find them for all different prices. I know I did see some coffee trailers that were being sold that had all the equipment in them for around like $100,000, which yes, that's a lot, but if you don't want to go through all of the process of researching equipment and reaching out to suppliers and testing out things, then that might be the way to go for you depending on the funds that you have and how quickly you want to get started. But the cost was a huge pro for me for trailers. We actually ended up working with a metal fabricator who made the entire skeleton of our trailer. And that was so awesome working with him, and it is so sturdy because of that. And then Jacob and I just did all of the renovations on it with the help of our electrical friends, carpenter friends, and family members that knew what they were doing. We had so many people come and help us with it. So because of that, we were able to save tons of money, but it took a lot of time. I think that we were doing renovations for like a year, I want to say. And the whole planning process that came before it was a lot too. But the cost for me was just one of the biggest pros because I knew that I couldn't afford something that was ready to go, even though that would be a heck of a lot easier. You can really find any trailer on Facebook Marketplace that you can even do the same thing. As long as it has a good base, a good axle, the tires look good, it's not rusting, you can really build it yourself and just make it a fun project. But if you want something that's more ready to go, they do sell already prefab trailers for $15,000, $20,000, and maybe even less if you do a little bit of research. I know a lot of people are trying to sell them on Facebook Marketplace that have moved on from trailers to an actual shop. So it's something to check out because I think it'll fit a little bit better if you have a lower budget. I talked about this again in the cons, but one of the major pros of having a trailer is it's so customizable. You can make your trailer 20 feet long if you want to. You could do a little mini trailer that's 10 feet. You could do whatever you want. You can make them as big as you want, as tall as you want, as long as it's within your regulations. I do know that the width has to be, I think you can only have it like a little bit more than the width of a car. Every state is different on that one, but the width kind of has to stay the same, but you can make it a lot of different lengths and different heights. Just be careful if you live in like an old school town that has a lot of tunnels, because you want to make sure that you can get through the tunnel. But the way that you can customize a trailer is just so cool. I have seen some really cool trailers. I'll insert a couple pictures here that were kind of part of my inspiration when I was opening, and there's just so much that you could do with them. And you can really customize them through the life of the trailer. If you're not looking to open a coffee shop, or maybe you are later in the game and you just want to keep your trailer going for events and whatnot, you could take off the siding and make it a different color. You could replace the windows. You could do so much with it. How much you can customize it is a huge, huge pro. You can make it exactly what you want to exactly your style. The last pro of a coffee trailer versus a truck for me was the fact that you can fit it into the plans for your future. No matter what it is that you're going to do in your future, you can really make that trailer work for you. What I mean by that is you can sell it, you can upgrade it, kind of like I just talked about, or you can decide that you want to plant it somewhere and just be in that spot, and you don't have to worry about your engine eroding or something going in your whole mechanics of the car. You can just plant it and leave it. There's so many trucks and trailers where I am right now, and they have tons and tons of trailers that are just planted there. They actually take the tires off and put them on like bricks or put them on cinder blocks, and that's just it. It's like a little shack. So you can take your trailer that was once on the road, and if you find a spot you love that you can just keep it there you go. It's so much easier because it's basically like a little tiny shed that you can just find a home for it. And like I said, you can just sell it so much easier because whoever is buying it isn't worried about how many miles it has on it. They're not worried about if something's wrong with the engine or anything else in the truck. It's a trailer, so they're going to have a vehicle to pull it with, and they're not going to worry about any of that. So the selling of it is so much easier if you decide you're ready to move on and you don't want to do it anymore, or you're opening something else. You know that you can get your money's worth for it because it's just a lot easier of a sell than a truck. Unless your truck is in great condition, and then it might be perfect for you. But I know that even in 10 years, as long as I take care of my trailer, I can still get a good penny for it if I did ever want to sell. And then the last thing that comes from that, like I said, is that upgrading feature that you can just change out anything that you want on it at any time. You could take down a wall, you could replace the floor, you could do whatever you want and not have to worry about any other part of the trailer like you would a truck. Now, I'm going to go with the cons of a trailer. And believe me, with the time that I had my trailer, I know there are definitely cons, but they're things that you can work through, just like the cons for having a truck. Like I said, with the whole truck situation, a con of a trailer is just the parking and the driving of it, especially if you've never driven a trailer before. You can totally learn, but it might be a little learning curve at the beginning. But the parking was the biggest issue for us. We would go to so many events where they wouldn't really account for the fact that we have two vehicles or two units that we need to finagle into a certain spot. We had so many different times when the organizer would be like, oh yeah, can you just go in between this tent and this tent? And I'd be like, I really can't go in between these two tents because I would have to like jackknife the trailer, fit it in there, and then it would just be impossible. The person that's in front of me would have to move. So that did happen a lot of times. And the thing that was hard about that too was sometimes the organizer would end up putting you in a worse spot than they had originally intended just because it was the only spot that you could fit into. We did have one event where we were parked next to a Dunkin' Donuts. I'm assuming because it was the easiest place to park the trailer, but it just was awful because people were going to the Dunkin' Donuts to buy the cheaper version of the coffee instead of coming over to us. And Obviously, they just see the Dunkin' Donuts sign and they think, oh, there's a coffee thing here. Let's go inside and get that, without actually seeing my trailer. So that was just something that we had to kind of think about whenever we did another event. I would always email the organizer before and say, where are you planning on parking me? Just so you know, I have to be able to fit my truck and my trailer. And if it's possible, I can come super early, but I need to be able to fit. Which kind of brings me to my next point. And one of the biggest cons is with a trailer, at least for me, maybe I'm the slowest cleaner in the entire world, but I was always the first to arrive and the last to leave every single event. Sometimes I'd have to arrive at events so much earlier than everybody else just so I could get into my spot. So I could get my truck in there, I could unhitch it, I could drive it to its parking spot, and then I would just be sitting there, like, waiting for a couple hours for the event to start because I didn't know when the person in front of me was going to get there. I didn't know if they had a truck that they could easily just pull forward so I could move in, or if it was a tent. So that's just something I had to do. I was just always the first person there. And then I was always the last person to leave because I had to wait for the person in front of me to get completely cleaned up so that I could pull my truck in, hitch it, and go. And a lot of the times that didn't happen until very, very long after the event was over. There was multiple times where I had been behind a vendor who had a complete table set up, and I couldn't ask them to break it down any quicker, so I would just be waiting for them to clean up everything and just be sitting there, just waiting to go. And there was a couple times I did some events where the space was so small of where the vendors could set up that I'd have to pull in my truck after they were all gone because I literally couldn't get into the event without them being gone. So I was just always the last person to leave. But if I had a truck, I could easily just do a little parallel park or just pull in and out like super smoothly and not have to worry about anybody. Every event I went to, the trucks were gone first all the time. I did so many farm events and the trailers were last, the booths were last, but the trucks were gone 15 minutes after the event was over. So it was definitely more time efficient, that's for sure. Last con of having a trailer I did talk about a little bit before, but that is the 2 compared to 1. And this is in the case of storage. So because we were 2 instead of 1, like meaning a truck and a trailer instead of just a truck, like I said, the storage of the actual trailer is a lot harder than the truck because we took up 2 spaces instead of 1. So if you live in a community where you can really only fit 1 parking space, the truck is the way to go. But if you really do want to go with a trailer, there's many commissaries that will help out and say, yeah, you can park your trailer here. But then remember, you're going to have to drive to your commissary in the morning to get your trailer, bring it back at the end of the day, and then it leaves the risk of it not being at your property, so you really can't keep an eye on it. I did look at a couple commissaries that they did have space for trailers to be parked, but it was not gated. They had security cameras, but those really only do so much, and I just felt it wasn't as safe there. So like I said, I decided to leave it at my mother-in-law's house where I knew it would be safe at the time. So that was just something for me that I was really struggling with when I moved and then only had 1 space available. So the 2 instead of 1 is just a major con with trailers, but I will say you can figure it out. There's ways to go around it. There's places to park it. If you live in a place where there's tons of parking, or even in like a homesteadish type situation where you have land that you can park, no one cares, that's perfect. But it's a little hard for if you live in more of a city, large town environment. So how we feeling? That was a lot of information, but I hope that it does help you kind of narrow down what you want to do. And whatever you're going to end up picking, whether it's a truck or a trailer, you're going to be so successful and it's going to work out great. Every single thing that you do in life always has major pros and major cons. And it's just kind of whatever you feel like is your non-negotiables and what's something that you really just don't want to deal with. Maybe you really, really don't want to deal with anything with mechanics, which is exactly where I was. And that's why I was like, trailer's the way to go. Maybe you really don't want to deal with towing something, then a truck is the way to go. There has to be something that you're just like, you know what, that sounds terrible to me and I don't want to do that. And hopefully it'll help you make your decision. I would say if you are looking into either, look at Facebook Marketplace first, look at used things first. And unless you have the budget, and then go big, but tons and tons of good stuff online from people that have moved on to either a shop or they closed and they're just looking to actually sell their entire setup, which would include all of their equipment and a lot of other great things. So it's definitely a lot easier this day and age than it probably was, I'm sure, years ago to start something like this. Coffee trailers are becoming so big. I think when I first started, I mean, maybe I was oblivious, but I could have sworn there was only like a couple coffee trailers in New Jersey. And now I look at Instagram and I just see so many that have freshly opened. So it's definitely a lot more accessible today than maybe in the past, which means that there's a lot more resources for you. So I hope that this was one of the resources. I hope that this was super helpful for you. I'm going to continue this series and talk about different topics. So if there's something that you've been wondering in your process of opening your mobile coffee business, leave it in the comments or send me a message and I will try to go over it if I have some good knowledge about it. There's certain things that I am so excited to talk about. Things that I could not find just a good, straightforward video on when I was opening, like water tanks and where the heck you dump your gray water and just how to formulate your menu and what should be on your menu. And I'm really excited about a fun video I have coming up where I'm just going to be talking about how to stay motivated during this time when it feels like nothing is happening. So I'm super excited for the rest of this series and I hope that you guys like it too. And I'll see you next time. Bye.